Welcome to Five Things. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Marc Kulkin and Greg Katz, and we are talking USC's 31-16 loss to Arizona State. SC not able to come out to the desert and get it done. We'll jump into this, and with our five things, the first thing after every game is our player of the game. Greg, go ahead. Start with you, your player of the game from this one.
Well, I'd like to say defensively, I thought that Kenai Maga had a good game, 11 tackles. I thought that was noteworthy. But I think for my player of the game, I'm going to have to go with the Scottsdale native, Mr. Parker Lewis, who provided fireworks with those long field goals of 38, 45, and 52. And he was 1 for 1 on his PATs. So I think that all in all, Parker had a great return to his native state of Arizona.
Marc, go ahead, jump in. Your player of the game.
Yeah, I'll keep this short and sweet. Defensively, Xavier Alford, 2 interceptions, one of the very amazing diving variety. And other than that gray fox that sprinted across the field and up the stadium stands in 0.5 seconds, which was amazing.
That's not fair. I was going to go with the fox. Oh.
I'm sorry. I told Greg I would come up with something else. I apologize, Erik, but my frustration level is...
It's okay. Yeah. So Xavier Alford, Parker Lewis, absolutely. Alford was going to be mine. I think, if we're talking about the game overall, it's Arizona running back Rachaad White. And Arizona State, they brought 3 running backs in, and all 3, I mean, the names are more difficult to spell, each one more difficult than the other. And by the end of it, boy, I could spell Rachaad White. No, absolutely no problem. You knew what was coming and you knew he was getting the ball. He ends up with 202 yards and 3 touchdowns and just, one of those kind of all-time rushing performances against USC, certainly in recent memory in terms of guys just doing whatever they wanted against them. So that he was my player of the game. Again, hat tip to Parker Lewis and Xavier Alford from USC and to the Gray Fox from Tempe. Let's go. Our second thing now, the play of the game. Marc, we'll start with you. Your play of the game from this one.
Yeah. Were there any plays of the game? So I hate to harp on the negative, and I really don't want to point out a particular player. However, I just for context purpose, no, there were no plays of the game. I'm just going
to Greg, go ahead, play of the game.
Well, I want to make sure that Marc is feeling okay. We're not on a...
I'm okay. I'm not going to throw the players under the bus. I think the coaching staff did plenty of that after the game on their own.
Well, it's nice we can keep this kind of light. I know that our viewers are probably as frustrated as any of us are, but I'm going to pick the play of the game would be, again, I'm going back to Parker Lewis, that he kicked that 52-yard field goal, and I thought that was kind of the play of the game. Now, I will say that I must have interpreted something. I thought when we had player of the game, we were just sticking to USC players, but I think Erik was correct in saying that Rachaad White was the player of the game if you look at both teams. And I would say the play of the game for me was, I guess any of White's runs were a play of the game. They illustrated how great he is, and he'll be in the NFL. I thought it also illustrated just how poor USC tackles. So it was greatness and ineptness. This is what happens when they both mate each other. You get a 50-some-yard touchdown run of ESPN Sports Center variety.
Yeah, for me, the play of the game in terms of the one that maybe swung momentum the most is the holding call against Chris Steele. And this was something where it sure looked like it was on the complete opposite side of the field. I know we didn't get, being at the game, didn't see it, didn't have like a quick replay that we could see too. So can't right now speak to, definite penalty or anything like that. But in terms of what was called and how the play developed, that was a 3rd and 13 play where Jaden Daniels runs and he's stopped well short, and USC probably going to get the ball back on a punt. 2 plays later, Arizona State is in the end zone. So yeah, you still had a chance to stop them. And so maybe the 50-yard run right after that's the play of the game. But it's kind of all those pieces. And that was the one that kind of started it. And I, for me, again, that's the play, because if you take that away, you can't get the 50-yard touchdown. Now, saying that, USC did not show a whole lot thinking, oh, if they get the ball back here, they're going to run down and score, and they're going to win this game. But as far as kind of momentum, and SC had kind of scratched back, they were down by 1 at that point. The touchdown kind of pushes that to 8, and SC can't see anything the rest of the way. So I think that was kind of, again, in terms of momentum and how it affected things, that one was really big. Greg, we'll go with you, our third thing, and this is going to be the expectation you had coming in that was met in this one.
Well, it was met that I thought that Arizona State would run over USC. I don't think that was a surprise by any shape or form. I was disappointed nonetheless. I expected the offense to really struggle without Drake London. I think it'll take perhaps another game so they can start feeling kind of comfortable with it. Thank goodness it's Cal, but then Cal is going to be all upset because they got upset by the JV team in the Pac-12 conference, Arizona. I don't know that, expectations with this team. I'm afraid when my expectations for this team get met, they're always of a negative variety. I don't like to say negative. I like to think realistic. I shudder to think what happens when they play UCLA and their running attack. I think that's going to be, it's not going to be an eye opener because I expect what most everybody else is going to expect. I would only hope that they learned a lot on offense tonight. Go back to the film room, see what's going on, and see if they can actually make corrections. Because I tell you what, I don't think the Cal team they're going to face next week is going to be the team that faced Arizona, because Cal had all those issues with COVID requirements up in Berkeley. And I'm sure they'll be an upset football team, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So those are my expectations.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead. Your expectations then in this one.
Yeah, first of all, going forward, I would like for us to remove the word expectation and let's start using anticipation. Because when you expect something and you don't get it, I think you're going to be it's a bigger letdown. So I always anticipate some really questionable play calling on offense. And we got that in spades tonight. Calling run plays on 3rd down in 2-down territory and then not going for it on 4th down. I anticipate questionable play calling, and especially if we're going with this 2-quarterback system, we're not seeing play calling that helps each of their strengths. So I just anticipate this season just playing itself out slowly, methodically, painfully. So going forward, let's start using that instead of expectations.
We'll take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Greg, I'm with you on a couple of mine, and it's kind of similar that Arizona State was going to run it. And the coaches talked this week about how important it was going to be to be able to stop the run. You can't let that get going on the ground downhill. But there just wasn't anything about this USC defense coming in that made me think, that they're going to be able to stand up to it and they're going to be able to do this. You had another game with a couple guys up front on the defensive line that were out, and the inside linebackers, they've made tackles, but you don't leave the game ever thinking, man, they sort of set the tone and they made the offensive players from the other team kind of fear running up the middle or getting hit by them. And he had that one big hit, but they're just, that's something that you expect if there's a team coming in that can run the ball and knows they want to run the ball, they can get it done against USC this year. And so certainly that one, but for me, the big one was, I did not anticipate a ton from the USC wide receivers. And this was a game that they had to step up without Drake London. I think we're getting a real sense, not, again, the expectation, the anticipation is that Drake London is that much better than any other wide receiver on the USC roster, any other wide receiver on any Pac-12 roster. That's not a slight to the USC wide receivers when you talk about Drake London being that much better. But they just haven't shown that they can be those guys, that they can get open when it's a one-on-one thing and they have to get it done. Being able to get open, being able to catch the ball, being able to get upfield after that, it's not something that they were able to do consistently. And you threw a lot of guys out there in this game too to try to get kind of some momentum from somewhere. And it just didn't happen, whether it's kind of taking deep shots downfield that don't get connected, short stuff where, maybe the throw's a little bit off, but boy, if you want to be a big time wide receiver, if you want to be the lead guy for USC, probably some catches that you have to make. And wide receiver coach Gary Colbert, he said, hey, we left plays out there. And that, again, you want to talk about anticipation, expectation coming into games. That has been something that has been talked about after every single game. Boy, we left some stuff out there. Didn't execute any of that kind of stuff. That's what you have to assume is going to happen coming into every USC game. Let's go to our fourth thing, and that's the surprise that we didn't see coming. Mark, go ahead and we'll start with you on that one.
Winning the turnover battle, I believe, without going back and looking at it, winning the penalty battle, so to speak, and still not being able to achieve what they need to do to win. I mean, they went on the road and they did what, we thought they needed the things to do. Win those little things, not be the team that makes have the unsportsmanlike penalties. I don't think there were any of those in the game. The offensive line played well. And again, to win the turnover battle and to win have the least amount of penalties, make the least amount of mistakes, I guess, and still come up on the short end of the stick.
Greg, go ahead. You're surprised.
Well, you guys done a touchdown. I was actually surprised with the Fox. I didn't think the Fox would be as quick as it was. I didn't think it could actually go from the stands onto the field and actually make its way out of the stadium. And I was told that the Fox actually lives on campus in one of the old buildings. So it must have been, maybe it was Fox night or something. I don't know. But I was impressed by the agility of that Fox not to get itself killed or bite somebody. I mean, it was right up in the stands, for goodness sakes. All I could think of was, who wants to get the first rabies shot? But that being said, I was actually surprised that nothing surprised me. And I was a little disappointed in that. I guess I could say I was surprised there was no sacks. I mean, SC didn't give up, the offensive line didn't give up any sacks, but by the same token, they only got 92 yards rushing. So I guess but I will say that Keaton Slovis did get whacked around a couple of times, but that's going to happen in a game. So I think one of the big surprising things, honestly, which kind of annoyed me, was that Dante said that Slovis was going to start the second half.
That Dart was going to start.
Dart was going to, yes, my mistake. Dart was going to start the second half. And when it was Slovis, the people on television were quite angry about it, especially the sideline reporter. It was like, what's that all about? To my knowledge, was there anything that you guys found out that there was a hand injury or something to him?
Dante said after the game that Jackson was dealing with some sort of hand issue. When we saw Jackson after the game, his hands looked fine. There was nothing wrapped up. So
he was in there getting whacked around on the last drive of the game.
Well, I will tell you this. There was a shot of him kind of massaging his right hand, which led me to think, is there something wrong with it? But why would you tell somebody, yeah, he's starting and then he isn't, unless Dart said something in private on the sideline saying, you know what, why don't you give me another series off? It was very bizarre to me.
Yeah, you touched on the surprise for me. Arizona State came in generating a bunch of sacks and a bunch of tackles for loss. They were number one in the Pac-12 in tackles for loss per game coming into this one. They end with 4 tackles for loss, but no sacks. And really, I thought the offensive line, there were USC, it felt like found itself in a lot of third down situations where they were obvious pass situations. And there was enough time. And it didn't feel like Arizona State brought a ton of blitzes in those situations, and they were okay to kind of challenge the receivers to get open. But still, this is not an offensive line that has been as good as that in previous games. And so I thought that they held up well. And this is with Cortland Ford not playing, and you shuffle a little bit, and Justin Dietz is in it at left guard, and Andrew Voorhees is kicked out at left tackle a little bit, and then you lose Liam Jimmons later in the game, and you've got some shuffling going on, and I thought they played well. That was kind of a surprise that Arizona State couldn't get as much done up front. Greg, like you said, it's not as if USC just turned it on and ran the ball all over them and all that. It felt like the Arizona State defense was very confident against this USC offense. And at no point did they think we've got to do something different and we've got to change things up because we don't know what's going on. Felt like a lot of stuff got kept in front of them, and they were okay with whatever USC wanted to do.
They were so confident, Eric, because you and I were talking about this after the game, that they played man coverage pretty much all game without what I think people would consider their best coverage guy in Jack Jones. That's how much respect they showed for USC's passing game tonight.
And they took, like we said too, they took some penalties and they did, that kind of stuff and had an interception wiped away, but also didn't let USC kind of get things going and get the ball going downfield. So it was, if we're on the other side and we're talking about that Arizona State defense, I think you have to be pretty pleased, if you're the Arizona State coaches with how they did that. Yeah. Let's go our fifth thing, and that's always the biggest takeaway. And Greg, we'll start with you on this. Your biggest takeaway from this one?
This team's in trouble. It was in trouble. It's really in trouble because if they don't beat Cal, they're not going to a bowl game. Not that I think they deserve to go to a bowl game. Not that I think that any team that ends up 6-6 deserves to go to a bowl game. But we saw some real reality checks. The fear of what would happen if Drake London didn't play in a game. The fear of they never developed a running attack consistent. The fear that the secondary is absolutely being shredded because of ridiculous penalties, ridiculous ability to especially at the safety position, the corner. I mean, it was all exposed. I mean, it was Arizona State's not going to go to the college football playoffs, but they are a talented and competitive team, and they came to play. They wanted to win. They got excited early in the game because I think the running style of White gets everybody all fired up. An oddity to the game, I just want to throw this in, neither team had a sack. How many games do you go to where there's 0 sacks on both teams? Mark brought this up last week, and I was in agreement basically with him that this team may not win another game. I mean, there's only 3 left. And 4-8 is looking very, very possible to me. And my attention, I don't know how our viewers feel, but I've kind of said, okay, let's play the game. I'll watch it, whatever. Okay. But my real sole concentration is what's happening with the candidate search. That's, I guess that's the hope that I see. And the takeaway that I get. The takeaway is the season's going to end. There's not going to be any climax to it or anything. It's just going to end. And all attention is going to be looking at the candidates and what are they doing and how are their teams doing. So that's kind of my takeaway, to be honest with you.
Mark, go ahead. Your biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I just touched on it a moment ago. I think it's the lack of respect that every opponent shows USC. I mean, granted, Drake London isn't playing, but the fact that other teams know that a passing offense has a group of receivers that can't get open. They have great talent at running back that, has a very inconsistent run game because you have some very inconsistent play calling. You're playing 2 quarterbacks. They have no idea when they're going in, when they're coming out. So I think the implication that everybody's going to take away from my takeaway, this team has no idea who they are, what they're doing, and they are literally just waiting for the season to end.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from this is that I think we hit an exact right amount of time talking about the game, talking about the Fox. So I'm proud of that. because that was something I was really focused on coming into this. But for me, the biggest takeaway, it's the quarterbacks right now, because it's USC's present and it's USC's future, and you're trying to juggle these at the same time, and it's not working. The way that it's going right now is not working. And they said this is Dante, this is Graham Harrell, this is Jackson Dart, this is Keaton Slovis, said coming in, yeah, that was the plan. Plan was the same kind of thing as last week. And we saw Jackson Dart go in for series 3 and 4 after Keaton Slovis had 1 and 2, and then it was kind of a rotation like that. But it feels like when you set a rotation before the game starts and stick to it, why does anything that's happening during the game matter at all? So if we go down and score a touchdown with this quarterback, well, it's his turn to come out, and now we have to send this other quarterback in. And again, the quarterbacks are saying, they're trying to say all the right things, and they're not going to say, I can't do this. You're never going to hear that from Keaton or from Jackson. But boy, it just, watching it feels rough when you've got a lot of pressure. Hey, if I don't do it in this series, I may not play again this half, depending on how things go. And it just, you saw it a little bit last week with things kind of, getting shaky in that second half. This is the second game in a row where USC scores 6 total points in the second half. And it just, again, I don't think we're enlightening anybody here that watched the game. It absolutely is obvious that you've got to figure something out with that quarterback rotation, because again, they're saying, we can't let it affect our rhythm, and I don't think it did in this game, or we need to be better about that. But you can't roll it out the same way. It just can't happen against Cal this same way. And I don't know if there's an exact answer, if you have to just pick one guy and go with it, but that old adage for a reason. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. And that is right now what it feels like for USC. And that's something that has to be fixed over these next 3 games, or like you're both saying, we may have seen the last win for USC in this season. So on that positive note, as always, or as has been the case far too often this year, that's how we're going to end our 5 things again, from Arizona State's 31-16 win against USC. For Marc Kulkin, for Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to WeAreSC.